Well, blessings, everybody. Welcome to the last video of the last portion of the last lesson of revival or captivity. I thank you so much for staying with us. Be certain you read this scripture passage. If you remember at the beginning of lesson 4, I laid out several passages and told you to read them all because when you pull this storyline together, there is debate among the scholarly realm exactly how this flows. The timing isn't as important as the principles that are behind it, but be certain to read the scripture again where you can see what's going on. So Sennacherib had besieged the fortified cities of Jerusalem. Hezekiah had decided to cut off the earthly access, the top access to the water supply, and he actually built a tunnel, a conduit for that water to supply Jerusalem. He rebuilt the wall from Jerusalem. He supplied the military and their men, and he told the people to take courage, to be strong, that the Lord would fight their battles. Apparently, it was about this time that Hezekiah told Sennacherib that he had been wrong in refusing the tribute. Remember, Hezekiah said, I'm not going to pay anymore. So he came back and sent a bunch of money, sent a bunch of gold and silver, even stripping the gold from the doors of the Lord's house. Hezekiah at this time was using man's wisdom and man's approach rather than seeking the Lord. But Sennacherib sent an envoy to meet with Hezekiah's folks. You know how it is. The kings don't meet until their people meet. And here's what that envoy from Sennacherib was doing. They questioned Hezekiah's confidence. They said, why are you relying on this crushed reed, speaking of Egypt? And their message also was incorrect related to the high places and the worship of God. They said some things that were flat out wrong, though they thought that because that's what God's people were doing. That's a great thing for us to see. A lot of times people have their concept of God because of what they see us and what they see of God through us. And sometimes that's not pretty, and that's what was going on right here. The message they brought also called for a deal, okay? And they even said that they had been sent by God. Remember that line? Oh, God sent us here. They spoke in Hebrew, even though Hezekiah's folks said, don't speak to us in Hebrew. They didn't want their people to hear, but they spoke to where Judah could hear. And they also equated God with the previously defeated kings, the gods that the Assyrians had beat. So what was the response of the people? They didn't say anything. Hezekiah told them to be quiet, and they were. Hezekiah's response was he tore his clothes, he put on sackcloth, he entered the Lord's house. It was a day of distress and rebuke and rejection. He prayed and he sent a message to Isaiah. And so was this the point in time when Hezekiah humbled his heart? I shouldn't have said that. Isaiah sent the message to Hezekiah. There we go. Sent it back to him. So Hezekiah humbled his heart then. Now, was this the time, or did he do it 2 or 3 times? If you were in the earlier videos, you know what I'm talking about. Well, he went to the Lord and he prayed. Isaiah told him that the Lord would move. So he praised God and he asked for deliverance. And God literally said this, because you have prayed to me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, I've heard you. And so Sennacherib thought that he had done all these things, but no. God had used him. Isaiah told Hezekiah that not one arrow would be shot at Jerusalem. And that's exactly what happened. Because that night the angel of the Lord came and killed 185,000 Assyrians. Not all of them, but the mighty warriors, the commanders, and the officers of the camp. 185,000, that's a large army. So here's the story of Hezekiah. He faced death in the middle of his life. He was oppressed, but he asked the Lord to be his help. He asked to be restored and allowed to live, and God did that. He had bitterness for his own welfare. He was so concerned. The scripture tells us the Lord cast his sins behind him. The scripture also tells us that he wrote songs of praise. So here's questions for us. Do we walk in humility before the Lord? Do we trust the Lord? Do we allow the Lord to defend, or do we try to defend ourselves and create our own thing? Do we listen to the word of the Lord? I think we would do well to learn the lessons of Hezekiah. And wrapping up the entire little course right here, we got a question. Do we choose revival or do we choose captivity? I don't know about you, but as for me and my house, we'll choose revival. Thank you so much for being with me. Y'all continue on the next course, which will start this week. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.